Nasser, and I'm the space editor at The National. It's an absolute pleasure to moderate this discussion where we'll delve into how public and private sectors can work together to drive innovation, enhance workforce development, and tackle the challenges that the space economy faces today. Public and private partnerships have been the cornerstone of space exploration for decades, helping to advance technology, unlock commercial opportunities, and enable humanity to reach further than ever before. Our esteemed panelists here today bring unique perspectives from government, private sector, and space economy expertise. We're fortunate to hear from them on how collaboration is shaping the future of space exploration. Let me introduce our panelists. Salim Batsi Al-Khabaisi, the Director General of the UAE Space Agency.
Thank you.
Mario Grotz, the Chairman of the Board at the Luxembourg Space Agency. Mike Gold, the Chief Growth Officer at Redwire Space. And Harvey Duray, the President and CEO of Tails Alenia. Thank you for joining us today, and let's get started with the questions. So I think the first question goes to the Director General of the UAE Space Agency. We're wondering, how does the UAE pave the way for future public and private collaborations in space exploration, and how does it contribute to education and the workforce development?
Thank you very much, Sarwat. It's really a pleasure being here with esteemed panels. The formation, the mandate of the UAE Space Agency is actually falls into two areas. The biggest one being investing in human capital. And that's what was, recognized from the get-go. We need to be active internationally and do collaboration projects, programs. This led the way for the rollout of the Emirates mission to explore Mars, the Hope probe. That was done in collaboration between government entities, local government entities, and some of the work from the private sector as well. But the undermining goal was still there in developing some of our new engineers, scientists from the get-go in a program that spanned over many years. After that, we've tried another area of collaboration and trying to do, partnerships. And this partnership, extends overall the globe, many MOUs with different space agencies or research centers to serve the main goals that we had in mind. We realized that it's a mutual benefit kind of agreement. So we find these areas and explore it for the benefit of both sides. Resulted in collaboration with JAXA, for instance, in many of the areas to launch the Hope probe itself. Also areas in developing some of the work that we are currently doing in getting best practices to roll out here in the UAE space sector. Resulted in many programs. I'm glad to share that today in the UAE Space Pavilion, we have a number of companies that are part of our space economic zones that we've rolled out early on based on some of the experience and exchanges we had with our international collaboration, especially the gentleman next to me, and he will talk to you about it, inshallah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Al-Khabaisi. My next question for Mr. Grotz. What strategies have you employed to ensure that innovations from your public-private partnerships reach the commercial market? And what can be applied to future missions?
Yes, thank you. It works, yes. First of all, I'm also honored to be among this panel, and it's really a pleasure to be here again and to discuss about these topics. I think Luxembourg was one of the first countries which was focusing on commercial space already in the 80s, when nobody talked about space and commercial space. We invested in a space company which today is still one of the leading telecommunication companies, SES. Over all the years, we really developed the company, and we developed instruments in order to support companies not only to do research in Luxembourg, of course that's a very important element, but we also need to take the companies from TRL level 6 to TRL level 7, 8 and 9, so really to bring them to commercialization, and that is in the space area quite a job where you need which takes a lot of time. So it's really important that you develop the right instruments, and I'll just give you some examples of instruments which we developed for the Luxembourg ecosystem. The first is that when you develop intellectual property, this is not directly meaning that you are able to commercialize. So what we launched is an international contest to use an intellectual property and to develop companies with this. And I'm insisting on the international aspects of this. It's very important that we look abroad and that we attract the best talents through this type of context to Luxembourg. And then, of course, we are not offering only some financial support, but we're also offering an accelerator program which really helps the company at least to develop the first prototype. And somehow we are making them ready for the venture capital markets. That's where the government really has to intervene. When they're ready for the venture capital market, then we take a different position. We are there partnering with venture capital. We are investing in some of these venture capital companies who are focusing on space. And in the companies which set up activities in Luxembourg, we are even co-investing also alongside with these venture capital funds in Luxembourg-based entities. And we are doing this on the same terms and conditions than the venture capital does. So in fact, the venture capital does all the due diligence on the companies, and we are a follower investor, and we take the same positions, and we also take the same responsibilities then on the company. But in fact, the venture capital is also representing us on the board of the companies. A state is not always the best investor, the best entrepreneur, so we really should use the competencies which are on the market. So there are different initiatives, and with this we already have invested in quite many companies, and some doing really well in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good model that countries can follow. Congrats on that. Before we jump into the perspectives of the private sector, I think we might have a QR code up there that you can type in questions on Slido, and then I can read them here and take them at the end of this, the Q&A, the panel session. So Mr. Derry, how do you manage the alignment of goals and expectations between the public and private partners in your space initiatives?
So first, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this panel. As you said, I'm in charge of a company called Thales Space, which basically covers all space elements or space assets apart from launchers. And in our domain, so this covers satellites, but space infrastructure in general. We see and we acknowledge a shift of paradigm, moving from, let's say, the traditional business models to service-based business models that, and therefore towards PPP, and which represents for us, in fact, an interesting area of growth that we tackle with numerous programs and associated investment. When looking into this domain, basically what we see is that, as a matter of fact, in order for this to work, it's very important to have a very strong alignment between public and private on what will be the, let's say, keys for success of the business plan for that PPP. And in order to reach this common view and common alignment, a number of topics have to be put on the table, and we need to have, let's say, a common view on topics such as risk sharing. How is the risk going to be shared between the industry or the private and the public? And basically on this kind of programs, I mean, all programs in space have always, let's say, a technological challenge. So how do you manage the technological risk? How do you manage the development and program risk, which is also something that always happens? And finally, how do you manage the potential market risk? And here, let's say the share of responsibility has to be clearly assigned between public and private. When we are talking about very low-level technologies, there is an expectation of having part of this risk carried by the, let's say, by the institutions. Usually, we carry the development risk, which is something that is really in our DNA. And for everything that is related to the market risk, it's important to have with our customer, let's say, a common view, and to have from the public side a real anchor program that will give us certain visibility on the business case, and that will help us to close the business case. So that's one important element. The second important element is also to develop a local space ecosystem, technology and competencies that can support the commercial initiative. So fund the low TRL solution, support growth and internationalization of the companies, because in most of the cases, those companies will not be able to only, let's say, close their business case on one program, but they need the internationalization and in general support the export for all the stakeholders. In Thales Alenia Space, we have a good success, I mean an Italian success that I can refer to. We have created 20 years ago with the Italian Space Agency a joint venture called Altec that has been active for now, as I said, more than 20 years in the domains of ISS operation support, logistics, training, scientific data storage, analysis and distribution. And this partnership is really working very well, and is now probably going to be expanded to lunar activities.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gold, how do public-private partnerships in your space sector contribute to creating a competitive and innovative commercial market? I'm sure you have a lot to say on that. That's a big market in the US.
So let me first say, I got an award earlier today.
Yes.
But the greatest award is being with these panelists up here. That is fantastic to be with the most innovative, reliable commercial geotelecommunications company in the world, with Thales, and with UAE and Luxembourg, two of the most forward-leaning, commercially minded space agencies in the world. That when we were writing the Commercial Space Launch Amendments Act of 2015, I was using policies from UAE and from Luxembourg to shame the US into doing the right thing. That these two countries, they embraced commercial space before it was cool, and I think have gained dividends from it. For example, with Luxembourg, iSpace Europe is hopefully going to land on the moon in the not too distant future. And when I was at NASA, we executed an agreement, first time ever, for the agency to purchase lunar regolith from a commercial company. We always thought it would be more of a policy exercise. I am a recovering attorney, so I believe in precedent. We're trying to set a precedent. But because of the public-private partnerships, what was going to be policy may become reality, hopefully early next year. In the meantime, at UAE, I can't applaud enough how Emirates has stepped up and is providing the airlock now for the gateway. But not only is Emirates, and I certainly don't mean to speak for Emirates here, but let me say, I think it's a wonderful example of not only a vital project for Artemis, but the knowledge transfer. The fact that Emirates is focused on learning from it so that it not only gains a gateway, but has a new cadre of engineers, of workforce that can support a growing and dynamic ecosystem. That is the key. And that's what's so exciting about the new public-private partnerships. It's not enough when a government purchases a system from the private sector or executes a contract to support a mission, but now we're also asking the question, what does it do for commercialization? How does that purchase help me build people, build certainty, build knowledge in my growing aerospace sector? And that's a sea change, paradigm shift in the way that we used to think of things. How many people saw the amazing SpaceX landing with chopsticks? Incredible.
Yeah.
Brought to you by public-private partnerships. That if it wasn't for the PPPs, Elon Musk himself has been quite clear, SpaceX wouldn't exist. This entire golden age of commercial space that we're experiencing is because of public-private partnerships. At Redwire, we printed the first human meniscus in space. Who wants a meniscus? Who could use a meniscus? I know I could. It was Sultan Al Nayeli who helped us do that on the ISS. So thank you again to the UAE. We recently printed live cardiovascular tissue and then brought it back, still live, from the ISS this year. That will help us to solve heart disease. We're developing new pharmaceuticals from microgravity seed crystals that could help with diabetes, cancer, AIDS, all sorts of treatments. It's an amazing future that has been unlocked by public-private partnerships. So I hope that we have learned from the benefits and that we in America and the private sector and the government and then around the world continue to lean in to the power, the potential, and the innovation that PPP will bring all of us.
Great. Yeah, good to hear the benefits that public-private partnerships is bringing the industry. But now let's dive into the challenges as well. Getting back to Mr. El-Kubaisi on some of the challenges, like what changes are needed to better facilitate collaboration and innovation? I'll let you finish your water first.
Thank you. Well, challenges, there are a lot of challenges to start with, but it doesn't help to focus on challenges. We have a mindset of moving forward, and we try to turn these challenges into opportunities for collaboration, again, fostering partnership. And with that, we try to push through these challenges. And I'll give a small example on one of the programs that we have in trying to give back to the region and try to help out better, the space sector in general in the region with the formation of the Arabic Space Cooperation Group. That group by itself was meant to help out each other in getting more space activities, industries, sciences, technologies developed in each of the country members of the group. And it was with the government sought out that for this to work out, we have to again put a platform for this group to work on, as we did for the Hope probe and the Emirates mission to explore Mars. Again, and funding was secured to develop a small Earth observation satellite that can be the participant of which from the Arab group members. And we capitalize on all the students from these countries who are in the UAE to partake in this program. And, depending on the phase that they are in, now it's currently in the development phase. The CDR has been passed successfully a couple of months ago, and we'll start ramping up and actually the manufacturing, putting together the assembly, testing, and integration activities will soon commence. But that doesn't stop there. It goes beyond that. The opportunity comes also with the downstream activities. Data is available for all the country members to also, again, try to develop their capabilities in space analytics. To address this, our first private-public partnership that we've done was with the, formerly Bayanat company that you might know now was Space 42. We've developed a platform for specifically that. It's a way for us to encourage developing the sector, the small startups that we have that are more focused on the downstream, to have access for space data, which usually is the challenging part for startup companies, and to deliver their smarts in applications that they can host again on the same platform in a marketplace. where our partners who access to the platform can buy readily available or try to contact some of the companies who are partnered up to develop certain areas. This same platform can be used for collaboration internationally, and we're going to use it for the 813 satellite that we're developing in the UAE for the Arabic Cooperation Group to disseminate the data, to host most of the activities for space analytics, to address important things, disaster, and crisis management. We all know some of the past years the area has been devastated with the floods, earthquakes, and this is a platform that we can see a valuable addition in the whole grand scheme of things in trying to address this, besides agriculture, monitoring, environmental monitoring as well.
That's great. No, I'm looking forward to that satellite launch. I've been covering that extensively.
I know.
Mr. Grotz, how do you, what are the key factors for creating a successful ecosystem that fosters innovation and collaboration in the space sector?
Yes, I think it all starts with the political commitment. It is very important that you have a long-term vision and then long-term commitment also to space. Space definitely needs time in order to develop technology and to commercialize the technology. So you need to have a government which is committed to space and which also is investing money in the different programs, but also on the startups. And I think Luxembourg is a good example how to do this. We started this in the 80s. We continually supported the companies, and we today are a large contributor to ESA programs, but we also have our national programs. So this commitment is extremely important. Then, of course, you need to build the ecosystem, and you have to develop R&D activities. You have to strengthen the research activities at university and at the space agencies. You also need to make sure that you have the regulatory framework in place. It's extremely important, especially when it comes to the new space area, that you give legal certainty legal security to the companies. So that is of utmost importance. And the UAE and Luxembourg were the countries who was first movers in that area. And we see today that this is extremely important for the companies. And at the end, maybe last point on which Luxembourg is today also working, and I'm joining my colleague from the UAE Space Agency, is also gets more and more important to put all the data at the disposal of the companies. There is a lot of data, be it Copernicus data, but also a lot of data from private companies. And the idea in Luxembourg, at least, is today that we really need to create a data space where we get all the companies access to the space data so that they can use this data by free or by paying for it. It depends, of course, on the source of the data, but then by also merging this data with terrestrial data and develop new activities based on artificial intelligence or other technologies. So that is today one of our main concerns, is really also to position Luxembourg as one of the European hub where you can get access to the data which is publicly available, to the data from the private companies, but then also to the data from European agencies. But there also, we at the end have definitely to collaborate internationally so that it will also in the future be possible to exchange data between different regions of the world. And that is joining a little bit what you just mentioned on the UAE side.
Thank you. Mr. Derry, from the perspective of the private sector, what do you think the primary challenges faces public and private partnerships, and how do you think they're being addressed?
So there are indeed many challenges, but I believe that all these challenges can be faced. Three keywords or three very key elements to meet these challenges. First, we need clarity. You need also anticipation, and third, long-term planning. Let me start with very first, that might be obvious point, but that we should always think about. First, you need the public buy-in, because at the end of the day, these programs are funded by, let's say, by taxpayers, and therefore you need those taxpayers to agree and adhere to these programs. And it's therefore quite important to explain what is the return for the public, what is the interest of putting that public money into those programs. As you said, I mean, we have many very exciting programs in front of us. You talked about Artemis and indeed the airlock program in UAE, but other examples in Europe, we are talking about the future IRIS² constellation for let's say global connectivity. All those programs are very interesting programs, but once again, they rely partly on public money. And therefore, I think it's quite important to explain what does it provide to each and every citizen. This is something, by the way, that we do quite a lot within Thales IAF Space in general, talking about the public sector. We have a motto, we say space for life, basically what space can provide to humankind. And I think it's quite important to always make the link for the public between those programs and what it provides to the general public. Apart from that, and I think it was said before, having a very clear governance and contractual commitment on both sides is very important for all stakeholders. Those programs are complex with a number of cases, lots of stakeholders, and therefore having a very clear governance will help in executing them, in launching and executing those programs. I talked about the risk aspects before. The other element is also the adequate sizing and timing of public funding, which here also requires, in a number of cases, anticipation, especially for institutions that have long or complex appropriation cycles, or if the budget has short-term horizons. A number of these projects can encompass long periods, and therefore, let's say, having some guarantee that the budgets are going to be available let's say, during the entire period of the program is important, which can be done in some cases through regulation. Finally, those programs are usually complex and are very sensitive to timing, because there is always, from the private standpoint, let's say, a return on investment element, and therefore being on time is very important. So for a flawless execution, it's quite important that let's say, the industrial players that have been selected for those programs can demonstrate, I mean, a true experience and a true, let's say, complementarity in the different elements of the program that will have to be completed. So choosing the right industrial partners is also a key for success.
Thank you. And I think my last question for Mr. Gold, because we're running out of time. How can SMEs optimize collaboration mechanisms with larger public agencies to enhance innovation in the space sector?
So they need to embrace the international aspects of the space community. One of the great things with PPP, public-private partnerships, is that we've seen things become more fixed price, and we've seen them become more international. A fundamental principle of the COTS and CRS program at NASA was that you could involve international content. Luxembourg has embraced being a global entity. UAE, in the early days of DubaiSat 1, DubaiSat 2, Korea was assisting the launch of HOPE, done by MHI. Yeah. And Thales itself, composed of France and Italy. Bringing these countries, bringing international cooperation together, to me, is a vital part of the public-private partnerships, having the freedom to proceed globally to take the best of what is being offered. And SMEs, I think, also need to warn against the difficulties and challenges of export control. Second only to gravity, the ITAR has prevented more good space programs from launching than anything else. And one of the reasons they listed that I got an award this morning was, and you see how many times I'm fitting that in, was that I spent the first part of my career fighting for export control reform. And we need to make sure that export control reflects reality and embraces the international reality of the space age. Because if we don't do that, countries that I think focus on pure domestic will fall behind, and those that embrace international cooperation will be not only the economic but the national security leaders of the future. So no better location or venue than to say stay international. And finally, I'll say the SMEs who are working both sides of the aisle, you may have heard, it's gotten a little bit of press, we have an election coming up in the United States. And I hope that regardless of the results, we double down on public-private partnerships. We shouldn't take our progress for granted. Republican or Democrat, we need to continue to embrace the policy and the PPP paradigm that has brought about the second golden age of space.
Thank you. That's a good tip to follow. I think we have time for maybe one question. And I think to anyone, well, it's addressed to Mr. Kobesi. So if, from your perspective, having completed the Mars mission and now pursuing the mission to the asteroid belt, what are some of the most challenging aspects of knowledge transfer, and what aspects have been most successful?
Well, that's a great question. Just to tell you, we're trying to double down on the successes that we've done with EMM in our international partners and see where we can push the envelope, especially on capacity building, transfer of technology, and local participation in the program. So if we put kind of a tally, we had a few companies, not more than your hand, fingers on your hand, participated, local companies in the development of some part in the Hope Rope. Today, we're looking for that to be at least double. We're looking at the participation of even SMEs to partake in some of the area. We have, part of the mission is to develop a lander, which will be the last stage on Justicia, the last asteroid that we'll be visiting. This will be developed totally into its totality in country. So we're pushing the envelope on what's expectation we want to see our partners in the program and country, and also to do the job for us. Don't wait for us to do international collaboration. Go yourself, forge new relationships. As my colleagues have emphasized, as an agency, we are doubling down on international collaboration. And we want to see that not by us only as an agency, but everybody in the space sector do it as well. And that's how I think we can do better this time around. We have greater participation from academia in the new project. We've announced New York University and Abu Dhabi being our science partner, and many of that as well coming up, inshallah, to the future as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that's all the time we have today. Yeah, we've gone over time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today here in the panel, and looking forward to what's next for all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great job.